and it comes back to the same issue but differently. Would you agree that the police have the authority to disperse persons who are engaged in an unlawful or illegal assembly?
I believe the law prescribes the ways in which the police can disperse a crowd that is engaged in unlawful activity.
Right, and at that point they would, the riot squad would come and they would read a proclamation.
Correct.
Was that done in that particular instance?
No.
No, so the riot squad didn't show up.
No.
Who were the police officers that broke up the assembly?
They were uniformed police. I think some of them may have been training police.
And back to Prime Minister's Burnham's speech.
I'm sorry, I'm a bit slow today. How is it that we're saying that the rights police didn't wear uniforms? I don't understand how the question, the answer clarifies the issue. Your question was, the police have the right to disperse on local meetings. There was some agreement that what needs to happen is that the riot squad comes and reads a proclamation. That was the answer. And apparently, accepting that, he went on to say, so the riot squad police did not come, and the answer was uniformed police came, etc. Now, I'm not sure if we're saying that the riot squad were not uniformed police, and the issue of the reading of the proclamation was not addressed. So, just to have it very clear, I would be grateful if you could explore it a little more.
Very well. Mr. Souza, would you agree with me that the riot squad, that's also called the Tactical Services Unit of the Guyana Defense Force, pardon, what did I say? Guyana Police Force, sorry. Would you agree that they wore a viscose or brown kind of uniform? A khaki uniform?
Yeah.
Black battle boots?
Yes.
And green helmets?
Yes.
At that material time?
Yes.
And on their epaulets or their shoulders was a red marking with Guyana Police Force in it. There's a red patch on both shoulders. Yes. And you're saying that that particular squad or unit of the Guyana Police Force was not present?
That's what I'm saying.
Very well. And the units or ranks of the Guyana Police Force that were present is over the weekend, so we'll get over it. The ranks of the Guyana Police Force that were present, what uniform did they wear?
They were not in riot squad uniform. I believe they may have been in blue and black, some other uniform. But it was the uniform, as I recall, of regular police and potentially or possibly trained police officers.
Were you one of the organizers of the particular meeting?
I was one of the people that arrived there early. I would not say I was an organizer.
You would agree, though, that you were one of the senior WPA members that would have been at the meeting?
In those days, I was not a senior WPA member.
Oh, what would you have considered yourself within that hierarchy?
One of the remote troops, I suppose.
Very well. And did you observe any senior command officer approaching any of the leaders, per se, to have a discussion with respect to dispersing or removing themselves from the particular area?
No.
Madam Chairman, I don't know if this clarified, no, Madam Commissioner, I don't know if this clarified the area that you wanted me to explore.
Mostly. Was any proclamation read to your knowledge?
No proclamation was read.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, in the speech that Burnham made at the third biannual Congress, he describes the PVP as a dead party. Would you agree with me that that was simply a figurative term as opposed to something to be interpreted literally?
I would say it was an untrue statement. He was in Parliament at that time.
Right, so the term was simply a literal term.
Probably meant to insult.
Right.
I didn't hear that. Probably meant what?
To insult.
Insult, that's it.
And when Burnham spoke about, when he used the term battle in that speech, that certainly would have been a figurative speech as well, a figurative term as well. Would you agree?
Given the events taking place on the road, the figurative became very real.
And at the time that the Congress took place, the third biannual Congress of the PNC, that was against the backdrop of the burning of the Ministry of National Mobilization. Would you agree?
I don't have the dates, but subject to your advice.
I'm going to suggest to you that Burnham's speech to the particular delegate simply meant that the WPA was not going to intimidate his party, and it was a retort to his particular members that they need to stand up. Would you agree?
There was nothing in Burnham or in the PNC that would accept any possibility that the WPA could intimidate him. The PNC was in control, Burnham was in control. So anything that he said there was simply to reiterate the dominance of the party and the leader. It had nothing to do with whether anyone was afraid of the WPA in that sense. And to interpret it in that way, I think, would be inaccurate.
Well, let's put it differently. You would agree that the Ministry of National Mobilization...
Council, I'm glad you repeated it. I think accurately it is the Ministry of National Development. And it's important for the purposes of other evidence which is coming forward that we get the names there.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think to be even more correct, it was the Office of the General Secretary of the People's National Congress and the Ministry of National Development.
Thank you.
It was in February, was. I have no doubt.
It was the Ministry of National Development.
That's correct.
It was the Ministry of National Development and Office of Development.
Ministry of National Development. The Office of the General Secretary. Yeah, they were both.
Yes, but Mr. Williams is concerned that the order of precedence is clear. Ministry and then party.
I am not entirely convinced that that is correct. I've seen official publications of the PNC that says Office of the General Secretary of the People's National Congress and the Ministry of National Development, and I will produce that evidence to this Commission.
I think we can go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me ask you this. Would you agree with me that the Office of the Ministry of National Development and Office of the General Secretary of the People's National Congress was a very powerful office.
I believe it must have been, but I had no direct acquaintance with the office.
Well, the general secretary of the party would be a powerful individual.
Yes.
And Ministry of National Development, the commission has evidence that the national development seemed to have been a place where a lot of things were funneled through. And so I'm going to suggest to you that the Ministry of National Development was a powerful arm of the People's National Congress or government of the day.
I imagine it was, but as I said, I have no direct experience of it.
And I'm going to suggest to you that the burning down of that building shook the Prime Minister of the day, Forrest Gordon.
It may have done.
And in that context, he was trying to get his troops to stand up to your troops.
My troops had spray paint cans and they paint.
Your troops also was acquiring firearms, were they not?
I believe Tacoma has said this, yes.
Your troops were, you would agree that your troops were also acquiring firearms.
I have no direct information in that regard.
So you agree that that is possible, that your troops were acquiring firearms.
It is not impossible. I believe this has already been said, yes.
And your troops were also trying to foster officers of the Guyana Defense Force to desert or to work in concert with the WPA.
Since I was very often running from the police, I have no experience of that aspect of what was happening.
You have no personal knowledge.
No.
Were you familiar with Robert Gates?
I've met him, yes.
You met Robert Gates, and he was the bodyguard for
Rupert Rodney.
And you will be aware that he formerly was a member of the Guyana Police Force.
You're asking me this as after the fact knowledge or knowledge in the time?
Well, Dr. Rupert knew that Robert Gates was a member of the Guyana Police Force. Did you also know that?
No, I didn't.
Had you met Gregory Smith?
No.
No?
No.
How about McAllister, the GDF officer?
No.
Let me move on to Dr. Walter Rodney. Back to Dr. Walter Rodney. You'd agree that Dr. Walter Rodney was a courageous person?
Yes.
You'd agree that he was a brave man?
Yes.
You'd also agree that he was a risk taker?
Yes. I believe anybody in the WPA in those days was a risk taker.
Right. Now, when was the last time you spoke to Dr. Rodney prior to his death?
I don't know.
Did you speak to him on the day that he died?
I don't think so.
Were you at the meetings that there was a general meeting of the WPA on the day that he died where several people attended? Were you aware of that meeting?
I don't think so.
Very well. Were you aware that Dr. Walter Rodney was testing walkie-talkies?
No, I wasn't.
No? How close were you to Dr. Walter Rodney?
He was one of the leaders of the party. He was a person that was prepared to give young people in the party time of day, talk, discuss ideas, talk about what was happening, share information about regional and international history and political economies. With that answer close enough?
Well, that's your answer. Let me ask you this. You trusted Dr. Walter Rodney.
Yes.
And when I read the transcripts of your last evidence, I believe you said you had met Donald Rodney about 5 to 6 times previously
Yeah.
in various contexts. You've reviewed your evidence that you did the last time, right?
Yes, I looked at it.
Yes, and so I'm just trying to recapitulate that you've met Donald Rodney about 5 to 6 times prior to the day when he turned up at your door.
Yes.
Yes. Did you trust him?
Yes.
You testified that you lived approximately 3 minutes away from where Dr. Rodney met his demise.
I did.
And you testified in response to pounding on your door, you opened it to be met by Donald Rodney, the brother of Walter. He rang the bell and shouted, "Open, open, there has been a terrible accident."
Much has been made of the word accident, and I've said on every occasion that he may have said accident, he may have said something terrible has happened. I cannot say. I may have continued to use those words.
In fact, to be fair to the witness, the quote you gave a while ago is from page 69, and on that occasion, he said, there had been a terrible accident or something terrible had happened. And if you review the evidence she gave at the coroner's inquest as well as her statement, you will see that the witness was not being precise in terms of the words she said were used.
Fellow Madam Commissioner, let me ask you this. You'd agree that your memory would have been fresh, and as fresh as it could be, soon after the incident occurred.
And I would also agree that I was in serious shock.
Fellow, Donald Rodney told you to go and check on the welfare of Dr. Walter Rodney. He told you to go to him. Isn't that correct?
It is.
And you left your home and you went to the scene.
I did.
And you said that you got to the scene 7 minutes after you heard the explosion from Coral Street, correct?
I did.
And how were you so precise with that time?
I thought you were going to go there. If you push me, I will speculate. This is why I attempt not to speculate. I think the explosion happened, then there was nothing, Donald arrived, and then I set off to the scene. I'm not a good judge of time. I'm speculating on 7 minutes. I think 7 to 10 minutes might be what I said.
And when you left your home, you left on the premise, accepting what the commissioner just read. You left on the premise that Dr. Rodney was involved in a terrible accident or something terrible had happened to him, and he was in his brother's vehicle.
Yeah.
And when you left your home, you had no concern that you would have been at risk of a secondary explosion or any form of harm.
I don't remember thinking in that way.
Well, I'm going to suggest to you that you had no concern that you were at risk when you left your home to attend to the scene based on what Donald Rodney had told you.
Well, has that not been answered already? I have no concern of thinking about harm, no memory of thinking about harm. That's the answer given just before you ask the question.
I'm guiding Mr. Chairman.
Thanks.
Besides you, how many WPA executives were on the scene?
I was not a WPA executive. The one WPA executive that I shared a flat with also went to the car.
Why would you have taken the risk of rushing to the scene where Dr. Walter Rodney was?
I believe I responded subsequently in the same way. I'm told that a friend of mine is likely to be hurt. And in that context, we're talking about possible political hurt. The issue is not why would I take the risk. The issue is there something that I can do to help?
You mentioned at a particular time, I could have followed up on that question, but I'll leave it for one of my friends too. You mentioned there were 15 members of the death squad on the scene.
Again, speculating on the numbers, yes.
And how could you be sure that these 15 people that you spoke of were members of the death squad, as you say it was?
I think that squad had a certain demeanor, and I guess they carried themselves in a certain way. And they certainly responded to me, and I think all the WPA people in a certain way.
I appreciate it. The commission has evidence that the death squad was divided into 3 units.
I have no information about the details of the death squad operation.
No, I appreciate that. I'm just telling you what some of the evidence the commission has before it. It seems like 15 members of the death squad would have been a stretch.
That's her recall of the approximate number. That's as I understand it.
Let me ask you, how many of the members of the death squad did you recognize?
I don't remember.
Did you recognize Chico?
I don't know the name Chico.
You don't know Chico?
I only knew a few names in that side. All I knew was faces.
Who did you know?
I've named the person before, Fanfare.
Unfair.
Did any member of the death squad give you any direction on the night in question?
Any?
Direction. Did they order you to move? Did they order you to stay? Did they order you to wait on the police? Any directions?
No.
Now, my understanding is that there were 2 police officers that were directed to work at the prison that evening, Constable Isaiah Williams and Constable Easton. And they were from Breakdown Police Station. Now, if it's true that the Guyana Police Force had sentries that were in Julie, then would it be plausible as well that, given the risk-taking nature of Dr. Rodney, that his presence or his going to the prison, whether it's at the direction of Gregory Smith or whoever, was consistent with him as a risk taker?
I'm sorry, Counselor, are you referring to evidence number 4, and are you saying the evidence that there were sentries on duty that night or at some other time?
No, I am looking at page 31 of TAMLG, I believe it is, CID WR1, page 31, the statement of Constable Isaiah Williams, and page 32, the statement of Constable Easton.
Counselor, on what are you relying for the statement that Dr. Rodney went to the prison? On what are you relying for that statement?
Well, he was going to, well, if the premise is accepted, he was going, my understanding is he was going to the prison wall to test the device that he had on him, which was a placebo of a walkie-talkie.
That the incident took place near the prison is the same thing as saying that he was going to the prison? I think we have to be very precise in our language here. As I understand the evidence, the incident in which Dr. Walton was blown up, and that his death took place near the prison. But there's no evidence that he was going to the prison. I think there's a subtle difference. What about your proceedings?
No, I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman.
And in fact, the police officers' evidence that they're referring to relates to them being on beat and foot patrol, carrying out traffic vigilance and duties. Am I correct, sir?
They were to the Madam Commissioner.
Thank you.
To you, as if there were police officers in Julie, given the courageous nature of Dr. Walter Rodney, given the risk-taking nature that he adopted, that such actions in the face of armed guards would have been quite plausible if he was heading to that prison outside the walls to test the device.
Councillor, that sounds like kind of COI. I did not find the wrecked car with Walter's body near to the prison. I do not know that Walter was going to the prison. I said that he took risks, that he was courageous. I did not say that he was foolhardy.
That is the answer you got.
And you know what, see that you read that, I'm going to attack that answer.
I just wondered whether there was another question.
You know, when Constable Scotland cross-examined UC Quiana, Constable Scotland put to him the situation of Dr. Walter Rodney bending down and looking for a red light. And actually had UC Quiana do a demonstration. Were you present when that evidence was given?
No, I wasn't.
Well, let me ask you this. If it's true that the instructions was that Dr. Walter Rodney was to bend over and to look for a red light in that vehicle. Wouldn't that be something foolhardy?
Mr. Peters, I didn't want to stop you before, but I think this is the second occasion which you are inviting us to speculate. This kind of evidence, I don't think that, speaking for myself, that this witness can give us a helpful answer.
Very well, Mr. Commissioner. Let me ask you this. Were you aware of the relationship between Dr. Walter Rodney and Gregory Smith?
I was not.
Those are all my questions.
Thank you, Doctor. Who's next?
I can take a few notes here.
Mr. Cooper? I'm Mr. Cooper. Thank you.
Mr. Susan, you had spoken about the gas squad. Do you recall that there were other officers there, or do you remember seeing, in terms of police, the gas squad officers?
I don't remember seeing any uniforms there.
All these people that you rely on your recollection of these people as being gas squad people that knew you.
Yes.
What event you're talking about?
Sorry, I beg your pardon, the accident, the scene that we've described now.
On the day of
On the
13th.
13th of June 19.
And you're saying that the dead squad, the police who you described as dead squads, they don't wear uniforms, they were ununiformed officers?
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
And just following up a little bit on the prison issue, we're supposed to go and visit the scene, but in your estimation, the scene that you were at, that you ran to, how far away from the prison is that approximately?
I would say it was pretty close to a block away from the prison, yeah.
You had made a statement in response to another friend earlier that anyone in the WPA was a risk taker at that time. Can you just flesh that out a little bit for us, please?
I think one of the things that I found when I became associated with the WPA was that the public meetings were always under attack. And if one was not prepared to take the risk in the simplest form of being hurt at the public meeting, physically hurt that is, then one would keep very far from the WPA. And I think it is also true that many persons learned that association in the most innocent way with the Working People's Alliance had serious consequences, as in the loss of job, as in police harassment, and so on.
Even if they were active members.
Even if they were neighbors saying hi, good morning.
We've heard during the course of the inquiry about inferences that Prime Minister or President Burnham was larger than life in many things, but there's been a specific reference to his face being on exercise books. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Have you ever known of that being done before by any other Prime Minister or head of state or president or anyone?
I believe we've had exercise books with the Queen of England's picture on.
But since independence, because in Barbados you have various things that we use. Sometimes in the court you have to have a picture of the Prime Minister and the Governor General, which I may feel is wrong. But I just wondered to what extent in that period this exercise book thing was going on, and whether it's something else does it still go on now if you're aware, and would anyone else have been perpetrating this on the people of Diana, if you're aware?
On exercise books, no, but I think, members of the cabinet are plastered in various offices, schools, and various places that I don't know that they have any place.
To be, maybe. But certainly the only person you know who went as far as the exercise books then is the then president.
Yeah.
Mr. Pilgrim,
Yes, ma'am.
it has come to my attention that there are current exercise books which have photographs of presidents going back from 1970 to certainly 1999, but it is
All encompassing,
several presidents.
regardless
presidents.
of their,
Well, I haven't checked out their political affiliations, but I have seen such a book with presidents coming from 1970 to 1999.
great command.
Thank you.
So you recall?
I'm George.
You want to recall? You want to ask? Okay.
You're not getting
As far as, I think many people have open. Go ahead.
I'm asking if the learned responses will join this question.
We turn over the way. I'm shown an exercise book that has a number of people on it. And those include Mr. Arthur Chan, Janet Jagan, Samuel Hines, Chet Jagan, Desmond Hoyt, Barrett Jackdale, and Lyndon Forbes Sampson Vernon. Is it correct that these people operate on different sides of the political divide in terms of EPP, PNC, etc.?
Yes, that sounds like the list of the presidents of the.
That's what I sound like to me. Thanks. That's great with that. Thank you. Those are my questions, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gozo.
Well, George.
What is happening to the people in many parts of the world are listening to the inquiry? Sometimes of these mentions, and Mr. Dan Rose was led yesterday also a pamphlet. We don't know how far people when people listen to us.
Oh, I see what happened. My daughter's friend was absent when I cross-examined Father Marco Patrice at that point. I don't know.
Referring to another friend who we referred to, who was absent.
Pedro QC.
Mr. Pilgrim, you please. Commission Council, I think the time has come to you to re-examine. Do you have any questions?
Mr. Barnes hasn't gone.
I do not believe that Mrs. Scotland, either Mr. Williams or Mr. Ramos had the opportunity.
Indication from them that they were key.
I actually thought you did a very good thing there, Mr. Chairman. And you would recognize Mr. Ramek after he just come. No, this is a WPA witness. Mr. Ram is representing the WPA.
Mr. Chairman, I will go. I'm ready.
All right, Mr. Glasgow.
Scotland.
Mr. Scott.
It's a Commonwealth Games, Mr. Scott. It's a Commonwealth Games.
May I please, Mr. Chairman?
So they will.
This is a good morning. I represent you, Mr. John Rodney. Tell this commission, would it be true to say that within minutes, let's say 7 to 10 minutes of the explosion, that on the scene were members of the death squad?
That's what my timeline would suggest, yes.
Yes. And they were there in numbers. Let's say that we didn't get a particular number, but at least more than 8 of them were present on the scene.
That's my sense, yes.
And this would have been in the context of that night where there were only 2 members of the normal police force charged with doing the patrol duties, correct?
Yes.
When Donald Rodney came to your home on the night, would it be true to say that at the time his face was battered and blood was dripping off him?
His face was bloody. I don't think I would say it was battered.
But his face was bloody?
Yes. And his arms.
And his arms. And when he spoke to you, now let us clarify the issue and lay it to rest once and for all. You've given us in your evidence before this commission, and that would have been on the 29th of April 2014. You told this commission, I went downstairs responding to a very urgent ringing and banging on the door, and found it was Donald Rodney banging at the door, who said, according to the statement, that there had been a terrible accident or something terrible had happened. Yes? I will put my instructions to you presently, but let me explore the first one. Even if Donald Rodney had said, assuming we're not admitting that he said there had been a terrible accident, you would have understood that to mean that something catastrophic had happened, isn't that it?
As I have attempted to say.
Yes. No, they were playing with a walkie-talkie and an explosive and it went off. That's not what you understood him to mean.
Correct.
Now let me put this to you.
No, I want to get this right after. What is it that she is saying she understood that to me?
That something catastrophic had occurred and not that they were playing with fire and fire blew them in that way. You agree with that? You understand the phraseology, playing with fire? Now, my instructions are, and tell me if you can confirm that what Donald Rodney actually said to you was this. He shouted, and the door was opened by someone, and he told you something terrible had happened in my car at John and Hatfield Street.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure. Kind of confused about it. What is my knowledge of this one? Now we have the evidence of the witness.
What is your point of objection?
I don't know what is before, so we have the evidence of the witness, and he's reading on page 69 of the record. And I don't see what he's saying there that is accurate. What is it he put to the witness says?
Chairman, sometimes I really, Chairman,
As I understand, he was putting his claim, Dr. Rodney's instructions in the description of the events of the night and what he told Mr. Sousa when he went to the house. And he's attempting to do that.
So we have
a different from Mr. Sousa's statement, but that is his recall, given his claim of what he told her.
I don't have a problem with that, Mr. Rodney is coming to be cross-examined.
Yes, he's coming.
In any event, we were provided with these statements, including one from Donald Rodney, and the statement I have coincides with the suggestion.
Well, it seems you will be grateful for copying the statement. If there's a written statement by Mr. Donald Rodney, that should have been distributed to all the lawyers already.
It's already in the file.
No, I've seen a statement in evidence in the trial.
That's what he's already from possible.
I don't know what a statement, is there a written statement given by Mr. Donald Rodney outside of the trial? Which one would expect you to have?
What I am referring to is the statement which, according to the police files, was collected by a police officer named Nat Gray from Donald Rodney as far back as I believe the 18th of June. 17th of June. And if you look at the coroner's inquest, you'll see reference to it. If you look at the other files, you'll actually
But I was looking at that file, if your, Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, and Commissioner would recall, I had asked the attorney for Donald Rodney for a copy of the record. I have been given a copy of the record. I would like to show it to him so he could show me where that statement is. I got the last night I was looking for the statement image.
Madam Commissioner, that statement is not contained in the record that I provided. What is C? May I be allowed to address the Commissioners, please, without interruption?
I didn't know who interrupted you, but
Thank you. It was not provided. And more importantly, I didn't speak to my instructions without referring to any particular statement. And may I say this?
But none of that is in dispute. That I have that right to put to him a version of events that he gave you.
So may I just say
Let it
that?
turn out that there are 3 or 4 different versions. May put us in difficulty as to which one to accept, but I think that is substance. The versions are the same.
But I would put it to rest categorically for the verbatim record.
Very well, you're completely
Thank you very much. Madam,
I'm sorry, if the chairman will allow me, just for the benefit of Mr. Williams, because I understand that you want to know where to find the document.
I would love a copy of the statement.
So, you already have it, it's like TAMLJCID WR1,
yes.
and it is be found close to the back of the file containing the documents. You will see there, it's the same file that contains several other statements which the police officer who first gave evidence here provided us with. That's it.
Well, I hope that reference permits you. I hope that reference permits you, Mr. Williams, to carry out a more careful search. And Mr. Baker.
Well, I have it, what I'm saying, I asked my learned friend for it. And he had taken to give me a copy of that, but that statement I didn't see.
Well,
It's in everybody else's, so if yours.
we have closed the break time, and if the break will permit you to be furnished with any statement which you wish. This is available here. I think we should take the break now.
I'm not even obliged to explain.
Commissioner Costa, Commissioner Secretary, if you can assist Mr. Williams or any other officer in securing the document that they do not properly have in order, please do so.
Most grateful.